Brad Marchand back in the Stanley Cup Final for the fourth time in his career. The Panthers are there for the third year in a row. Claw your eyes out, Bruins fans. Here's where it gets interesting. There's a lot of people who are still in Brad Marchand's corner. Lord knows, I got him up in the studio every day. Still love Brad Marchand. Still don't like the Panthers in really any way. The only redeeming thing is that Brad Marchand plays for them. And so now they're in the Stanley Cup Final. They're probably going to be playing the Edmonton Oilers. I would say a very likable team in America. I know Canada is very different. It's very tribal. But I would say the Oilers are a pretty likable team. And it will be a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup Final where all Bruins fans were rooting for the Oilers. Now, does it split the fan base? If you're a diehard Bruins fan that hates this management and loves Brad Marchand, all of those boxes I check off, are you actually rooting for Marchand to win the Stanley Cup, even though it would mean back-to-back for the Florida Panthers? Now that is a question. It's actually not all that dissimilar to what we faced 5 years ago. Remember that? 4 years ago, I guess. And Tom Brady was in the Super Bowl with a team from Florida, the Tampa Bay Bucks, a team that we couldn't really give a shit less about in New England, right? Never came across our purview, really. And I think a lot of Patriots fans, myself included, there was some division, but I think a lot of Patriots fans were rooting heavily for Brady. And they were happy that Brady beat Mahomes and that he had another Super Bowl. And it was just, when he's your GOAT, that's who you root for. You know, now there were some Patriots fans who didn't, and I'm sure there will be some in the comments who were saying, no, you're crazy. I didn't root for them. He abandoned us, yada, yada, yada. But does that equate to the same thing for Brad Marchand? It's a Bruins legend, icon. He'll have his number retired. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. He's a captain of the Bruins. He won a Stanley Cup with the Bruins. So do you kind of get a pass to not have to root for him here? Because I'll be totally honest with you guys. I wouldn't mind seeing Brad Marchand win a second Stanley Cup. I really don't want to see the Panthers win it. I fucking hate the Panthers. Like, what? Why would I want that? I hate that they're the best team in the NHL. I hate that they're about to potentially go back-to-back, that they've won 10 playoff series in the last 3 seasons. I hate that. But I can't really stand Brad Marchand to do it either. Like, as good as it would be for him to have a second Stanley Cup, I believe he deserves to have a second Stanley Cup. Nothing is given to you in pro sports, but with the way his career's played out and with how many really good teams he's played on how many, I thought another team that should have won the cup in 2019, like, it feels like Brad Marchand should have a second Stanley Cup. And if he does, momentary, kind of smile on my face. But when you look back at that 10 years from now, this is not like Ray Bourque. This is like, oh yeah, I remember he won another cup with the Panthers. Wade Boggs won another World Series with the Yankees. It's like, okay. Yeah, I don't love that. Like, what if Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett won a title with the Nets? Don't necessarily love that. You know what I mean? It's like, good for them, but I'd rather not see the Panthers win the Stanley Cup again. And I have seen a lot of people equating it to the Ray Bourque thing. It's not. I'm sorry. It's really not even close. Like, the difference between having won a Stanley Cup and having not won a Stanley Cup is massive in this scenario. Ray Bourque was, one of the top 20 players of all time, maybe. And he played for you for 20 seasons. Was your captain for half of those, had been through more than half of those, way more than half, had been through it all with that team and had been jerked around, had been taken to arbitration in the middle of his career, and he had not won a Stanley Cup. Ray Bourque needed to win a Stanley Cup. He deserved to win the cup. And it was an embarrassment that he played 20 years with such a proud franchise, an original six franchise that prides itself on being a contender year in, year out, and he couldn't do it with them. That's when all of New England was polling for. And the Colorado Avalanche, who cares, man? Western Conference, good organization. They did have Patrick Waugh, which we didn't like, but Joey Sakic, Peter Forsberg, great players. They weren't dirty. They weren't gross. They weren't knocking you out of the playoffs. All those things that fit the Panthers criteria. That was an easy one to root for Ray Bourque. This feels different. I'm sorry. It just feels different. Again, if they win the cup, which they very well could, especially with this Hyman injury with Edmonton, they probably will win the cup. Like, I will have a smile with him, hoisting it and skating it around. But then you're going to see a fucking parade with Brad Marchand going on the boats in Florida. This was the team that, sucker punched him last year, knocked him out of a couple of games in the playoffs. And those two series, the 23 and 24, were as hotly contested as any of those Montreal series in the early 2010s. Like right there. Just as testy as the Philadelphia series, those ones that we remember from that great era of Bruins hockey and be like, man, I fucking hated those guys. Last year, like that hatred, that bullshit, that tomfoolery, that felt like the Vancouver series in 2011, which was the peak of hatred I had as a hockey fan. I hated that Vancouver team. Hated them. And the same thing with those Montreal and Flyers teams as well. Those Panthers series in 23 and 24, like that had the same kind of temperature. Absolutely. That had the same kind of bitterness. So to see your captain then go and play for that team that was so universally hated in this fan base, maybe the most universally hated team in that fan base right now, and win the Stanley Cup, that sucks. Like, that eats at me. And he's already there. He's already in the Cup final. Like, it already sucks, right? So I cannot equate this to the Ray Bourque thing. I can't equate it to the Tom Brady thing. It's somewhere in the middle, and it sucks. Feels more like the Wade Boggs thing. Although that's a little different because the Yankees are the most dearly hated rival, and the Red Sox had not won a World Series in almost 80 years at that point. So, yeah, I just can't spin it to me being really happy about Brad Marchand winning the Stanley Cup with the Panthers. And again, if you had told me at the beginning of this season, yep, Brad Marchand going back to the Stanley Cup final, I'd be a pig in shit. And then if you told me, okay, it's actually not going to be for the Bruins, go ahead and pick what team it's going to be. The last two teams I would have picked would be the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Just no shot he's playing for those guys. Here we are. Brad Marchand, who was great again in that Leafs series and was pretty productive in this series as well against Carolina in the Stanley Cup final with the Florida Panthers. There's no way to slice it, man. It's not going to feel good. And the Panthers, if they win back-to-back Stanley Cups, and in a 3-year span, they knocked you out with the NHL's best regular season ever, okay? Then went to the final, right? Then knocked you out the next year and then won the cup. That's already like fucking just stabs all over your body. And then the only way to one-up it is to then win the cup the next year while you're at home with your worst season in 20 years and they're winning it with your captain. There might not be a bigger, like, stab to the heart 3-year sequence in the history of Boston sports than what the Panthers are doing to the Boston Bruins right now. They are dancing on their grave. They're pissing on it. They're spitting on it. And then they're going to drink out of the Stanley Cup right on top of it with Brad Marchand. Oof. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Am I being too dramatic? Do you want to see Brad Marchand win the Stanley Cup? Or is there pretty much like everything else in the world you'd rather see than that? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're on the path towards 4,000 subscribers. We're here every weekday, high noon Eastern time, live on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. Check out the other videos on the channel, talking Bruins, a lot of Bruins, and everything else going on in Boston sports. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Zach Bourque keeps us on the air. We will see you tomorrow on a little ditty that we like to call, wait for it, yeah, the Cam Show.